Okay. Hi, Manju. Hi, Dhruv. Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Hey
hi.
Yogesh, hi.
Hi, guys. Hi. So, thanks for joining us today, Manju and Dhruv. So, for the audience today, we are going ahead with a webinar on how to automate things around DPDP compliance. And today we have two guests out here: Himanshu Gautam, founder and CEO of GoTrust, a DPDP automation organization, and we have Dhruv, partner at PSA Legal and one of the key people in the legal space who's giving gyan around DPDP these days. So today is going to be an interesting conversation around here. So let's start. Dhruv, Himanshu.
Sure,
Definitely.
Yogesh. Thanks.
Thanks. Go ahead, Yodhruv, go ahead. I'm going to follow you, as always.
Sure.
No, thanks so much for inviting. And very relevant topic because now that you know, ever since the rules have come in and the clock has started ticking, now we are less than 17 months away from a full-fledged, um, compliance timeline. A lot of very critical questions have started coming up, and I think organizations like GoTrust are best placed to give solutions for some real world problems that industry is facing right now. So over to you. I have some thoughts, questions, and I'd definitely like to discuss a couple of implementation solutions that GoTrust has to offer based on some of the feedback I have received from clients in terms of their pain points when they are looking at DPDPA compliance.
I think the same kind of view I have. All the customers I go and visit, we talk about the solutioning. The only thing which comes into the discussion is how much effort is needed. So that question is is really brutal because if you look at the impact this law has on the company's internal processes, and tech is of course impacted, but all other processes around the tech are also impacted. So the implementation is really heavy. Therefore, automation becomes the key. As much as you can automate, less amount of work you have to manually process, and then the scope will be much better, and the delivery timelines can be more restrictive, and then we can reach, like you mentioned, less than 17.5 months are there. So a lot of companies are planning 12 months roadmap with a buffer of 6 months. So that's what I see. And I think let's go ahead and talk about more, like you mentioned, for a few of the implementation techniques, automation techniques, how DPDP is going to be executed in the real sense. Yeah. Back to you, Yogesh.
Great. Thanks, guys. I think you stole what I had to say for the introduction. So thank you for doing that for me. So this is all about today's, like, how we are going to shape up today's conversation in this webinar. The idea is to actually know where the law is focused. The idea is to know in practical how we are going to take it ahead and how to make life easy for these organizations. Because ultimately, when a new law is out, it's always a panic state across the board. So let's begin with this. So, Himanshu, I think you will be the better person to take us through this part of conversation, that why automation? Why would any organization require automation for DBDPA? Why not do it with a couple of consultants and go ahead with that?
I guess I just answered this in the introduction part, but I'm going to repeat it more in a structured way. The DPDPA is applicable to every business and every department of the business, whether it's your service line, product line, or some business process. It's applicable. In some or the other form, we are processing personal data. Even uh, the companies who are manufacturing companies, there are a lot of discussion. They said we don't have any personal data. Ironically, their vendor data, the point of contact from the vendor becomes the personal data also. So impact is less, but still there. Now, if now we have done the baseline that the law applies on you, then you have to do a lot of things around it. The key duties like notices, consent, security, enough security safeguards, right to retentions, data breach, notification handling. So all of these are tasks which has to be done, can be done manually. Nobody has said to automate them. But today, if you look at the organizations, they're already struggling to complete their task and be upbeat with the market, with the competition. And then this builds up. So imagine how much more overhead will be added if we don't automate it. Now, with automation, which Dhruv already mentioned, less than 7.5 months are left to do comply with. A lot of people are hoping that rules get an extension, but that's not the case. So that's also, and Dhruv, and I'd love to hear from you what is the some news around it, because what people are talking about. Please tell me. Because I hear this a
I
lot.
want
The
to
rules might
clarify
get
this.
extended.
I want to clarify this. There is rules are not likely to get extended. Um, I mean, of course, this is with the caveat that there are always bouncers that are thrown at us. But rules are not likely to get extended. The timeline is very strict. 17 months or less than 17 months are left. Our data protection board is likely to be notified, I would say, in the next few months. So there will already be activity happening in terms of the adjudicatory body being set up. We have a consent management framework that is likely to come up in the next now, well, less than 12 months, about 11 months left for that to come into force. And all of this is in preparation for that 18-month timeline, or now the 17-month timeline. So I don't think timelines are likely to get will get extended.
Mhm.
One thing that, Himanshu, maybe I want to get your thoughts on this, because this is a constant conversation I have with clients, right? Everybody, my engagement, of course, with DPDPA is now getting cross functional. Earlier it was limited to legal, but now, of course, engineering, product, HR, marketing, a lot of these people now sit through in meetings. And one conversation that always comes up is there anything I need to do for this month or this quarter, right? Because if this is something that can be pushed to next month, or if it can be pushed to next quarter, let's think of it then. Maybe it's not urgent right now. So in your experience, right, when you're talking to companies, how do we actually communicate to them the urgency for getting this entire infrastructure deployed, the automation workflows that we are talking about right now? What is the benefit of being a first mover or an early mover?
So I would like to answer this question in the way that no proof of the pudding is in eating. So all the customers we go to, we make the roadmap for them, and the roadmap is very detailed, like task level roadmap is there. And once you start breaking these task level roadmaps, what you see is customers themselves are very certain that we know how our IT works, we know how our legal works, we know how our sales function works. So if I put a timeline of 2 months, I say, no, it's 6 months process. We deliver project in 6 months. How can we do it faster? I said, sir, the goal is to give you a playbook. So we call it a run book, like implementation run book. It has three roles as a GoTrust, as a OEM. Then there is an SI, implementation partner, or subject matter expert company. And then the third is legal, who has to verify, sign off. And fourth is the customer themselves. In the playbook, there's a task. And once you start running down those tasks step by step, you will identify that this is, I'm not going to scare you guys, but 17 months are also less, which are left. Because not because work is too much. New Year's coming up, then there's the Holi will come up, there are other festivals in between, and then Diwali will come up. So if we add those timelines in between, and of course the summer break for the kids will come up. So we also need to compensate those timelines. So what we have seen is the detailed run book helps the best. Uh, we just did one kickoff yesterday. Sorry, last working day was Friday in Gurgaon. The whole management was there. Initially, before the meeting, people were not too much engaged with this program, and now everybody asks the program manager from the customer to make them part of the core meeting and monthly monthly updates. So that's the impact the program has. That's the impact the automation which you're going to do will have, because first you have to define the baseline. The timeline is that it's not much in time. Therefore, the next step is how to move faster, and therefore the automation comes in. Yeah. Yogesh, back to you.
Thanks, guys. I think looking into all that, we have really started breaking down what do actually these rules expect. But I think just for the benefit of the audience out here, Dhruv, if you can very quickly skim through, like in a very simple terms, what do they mean and what exactly is Government of India looking for out here?
See, I think DPDPA essentially defines human rights of individuals as far as privacy is concerned, right?
Right.
The idea is for organizations to step into the shoes of the data principle and then do what is right by them. That's the underlying principle. Then comes, of course, the details, right? Like in terms of what exactly do I need to do when it comes to
Yeah.
implementation. The most fundamental thing is that you have to keep that data safe and secure. That's, from a breach perspective, in terms of if a breach happens, what do you need to do, and what all steps have you taken to ensure that a breach doesn't take place. Very critical, right? And in a lot of our discussions with the lawmakers, they in fact said that this law, if you think about it at its very core, is notice, consent, and cybersecurity, right? Like cybersecurity is such a critical part of this law. Then one area which I think people underestimate is DSR, or what we will now call data principal rights, in the
Yes.
Indian context, right? There are reports from back in the day where organizations have said that companies that did not automate workflows, ROPA, and then were forced to comply with DSRs spent anywhere close to 1,000 to 2,000 pounds per request because that workflow was not automated. Like imagine a situation where in a country like India, if you're a big significant data fiduciary, or even if you're not a significant data fiduciary, you're a large company processing, a customer facing company processing large volumes of data. India is the kind of country where whether an individual wants to know about their rights or not, they will exercise it because they know they can. So imagine how much you are likely to get flooded by DSR requests. And then if you don't have the ability to respond to them
Right.
accurately in a timely manner, you're looking at escalation going to the data protection board. And that is a very scary position to be, right? So to make sure your house is in order and you are in a position to map actual data flows in the most efficient manner to be able to tell these individuals where their data is, if they exercise the right to deletion, you are ensuring that the data is deleted till the last leg. And you're also able to differentiate and distinguish that this data was not processed on the basis of consent, and this was, so only the one that was processed on the basis of consent is being deleted. But if a purpose for some data is something else, then that data is going to be retained. That distinction also to be made in an automated manner becomes very critical. And that's where I think a lot of organizations are losing sight of the amount of work that is going to take to ensure compliance.
No.
I think you added
That's
a very important point here. Yogesh, I would like to add a point here that why
sure.
DSR becomes the critical aspect of it. So I would like to take one step back from DSR. I would like to say DSR is the critical or most complex part to give answer to. To make DSR right, there is three steps behind which has to be right. So one of the points Dhruv mentioned was the consent collection. You have to have right purposes mentioned in your consent so that you can get the right consents collected. And before getting the right consents collected, the purpose itself uh, should be created properly. What is the purpose? Purpose is derived after DPIAs and the department from or the ROPA from for which you are doing the ROPA and DPIAs. So your purpose, if it's created manually, you have to keep an manual work of keeping your purpose updated if anything or any process changes or any vendor changes within your department. So Dhruv, you understood. So there was a DSR request. DSR is based on the consent. The consent is based on ROPA and DPIs. This whole chain is connected.
Absolutely.
And so that's the breaking point. And there's the GoTrust as a company. We make sure that from the PDI, personal data inventory, creation, to the ROPA trigger to the DPI, and the DPI to the consent creation and the DSR creation, they all are interlinked. This spider web is all connected to each other. Yeah, you guys, you go to the next one. That's much better to give an explanation. Yeah. So turning key obligation to workflows like notice and consent, security logs, retention and deletion. So this together creates a workflow which is triggered automatically from different points like notices are created. And then if the notice changes too much, you send a consent notification to the customers asking them for your new consents, but you don't want to ask for all the customers. You will ask only to the specific customers for the specific version of the notice where the impact is. And this has to be automatically available to you. Otherwise, it becomes a nightmare to identify which of the data principals have signed up for which consent at which version of the notice of the consent. So this becomes really, really, really complex. Therefore, the automation from day one becomes important. And there are many solutions. People are only implementing consents. People are only automating ROPA and DPI. Some are also talking about uh, the DD or let's say discovery, only discovery. But point is, today or tomorrow, it all has to come together. It's nothing wrong to start with a piece. It's all good, at least starting. But what the end goal is that all has to be connected. Go ahead, Yogesh. I think the next slide will be better to discuss on the APIs, I
I
guess.
think that's a very common pain points that you have picked up, Himanshu, that we are hearing across the industry, and I'm sure Dhruv can concur that. The this is how the industry is responding, and that's where the major breaking points are. But when we talk about automating things, Himanshu, there is tons of aspects that the industry wants to understand right now, that where the automation should start. Like ideally, you're saying that it starts from the DPI and the ROPA at the very base level. But what about the customer facing things, right? Where the data subject or data principal actually comes into play. What about that? Like, how do you perceive that bit? Like, let's take an example through this slide and let's have a conversation there.
I would love to pass on this question to Dhruv first because he's more on the business and legal side. So I will add in the technical aspects to it, but I would love to Dhruv to take this to begin with.
No,
Right.
sure, Himanshu. I'll actually tell you a very interesting pain point I was discussing with a client yesterday. And again, it's not new. I'm sure you've experienced it and dealt with it as well. Whenever we tell them about any kind of change that their customer facing interface needs to have, right, because of anything that we are deploying, their biggest concern is you're adding a few more clicks to our customer experience. There will be loss in conversion. What do we do? And often, of course, our job is to find that middle ground, right? Like where we are like not becoming overly prescriptive, but working within the realities of their industry as well. But truth of the matter is that today consent has to be granular, right? So there is no exception to that where consent can be clubbed in a manner. So to that extent, when we talk to companies and say that, look, you've got to list out what all PII you're collecting in your consent notice. You've got to mention what purpose is going to be there for that, for which you're collecting that PII, and allow people to granularly select what they are consenting to. uh, there is some pushback that we get. So again, just in terms of your experience and your engagement with customers, how's that been for you?
This is a very interesting topic because everybody's worried about the touch points with the customer they have, for especially the retail customers where the sales is like they count like 3-click touch sales, 4-click touch points before the sales happens. And now you add a consent, it becomes a problem. I will tell you two things. Number one, we have a very big customer of India, which is live. The cooking consent is live there. They receive approximately 2 lakh visitors on the website on daily basis. Approximately a huge number for Indian customers. It's a very big one. Now, you will not believe how many of them are giving the consent and how many are declining it. Make a guess. Out of, in a percentage, out of 2 lakhs, again, 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, how many are giving the consent at a percentage level?
I don't know. Is it like 50-50, like 50% giving consent, 50% withdrawing or not giving?
25%. 75 is rejecting. Even today, when the law is not much aware what has to happen with it, people love to say no. That's how it is. If you ask for anything from human, it's human tendency, they say no. Whether it's good or bad doesn't matter. Okay, consent, okay, no. So this is going to happen in the market. It's very brutal. So the only way to win it is being a very clear explanation, very trustworthy site that they feel trust in giving the consent or any touch point, wherever the information is. And then these touch points should be so smart, so much automated. Like I give one example, what we have done for one of the customers, doing for one of the customers is all talk about we need to collect consent, right? Let's assume the 3 consent we need to collect from a customer. One is for marketing, one is for analytics, and other one is legitimate use because I have to do servicing to you. Now, legitimate was given, another 2 was not given. In the second touch point, when customer came for some servicing, he said, yes, I want that second consent also, and the third one also. He has given all the marketing consent. So fourth time when he's logging in on the portal, we have a dynamic consent. So dynamic consent is gonna remove that bar which showed the consent to you. There's no consent anymore. It's gone because we have already given the consent. So imagine you have reduced your touch point in the next or third login. So the experience is regained again. At the same time, you're very trustworthy. Therefore, the customer gave you the consent. And now he has a preference center where he can go and change his preferences. He doesn't want to give you consent or revoke the consent which you've already given. But these are the ways you have to. So there's something called static consent. There's something called dynamic consent, and then third one, which I explained to you, was a progressive consent. On top of something that even the bar and everything is not visible. The UI automatically shrinks. It says, "Okay, thank you for logging in," and move on. Or there's no space gapping or something. UI adopts itself automatically. So these are the few things you have to think of, and why I can give answer to this because we have been implementing it for many years in Europe and other geographies of the world. India, the law is big. And some next thing also will happen, which you have seen is, especially with retail customers, to get like consent, there will be a lot of kickbacks, a lot of coupons will be offered towards the customer. So there will be a noise in the market that people are buying the data now. That will come, which is a future. But if you again are very trustworthy, very honest about what data is used with vendors and how you show it towards how you use it for the company, the trust is built. And the next economy, the trust economy, which I believe is going to do the most of the sales. And our solution, when we look at it, we do not just automate it. We also have experience metrics with the consent, with quick consent and UCM. We also have, the measurements done. Okay, which banner people don't like, what color is not preferred by the customer. So, you can imagine we are a company who's automating DPDP. Now we are talking like marketing guys. We have to. We have lawyers in the team. We have marketers in the team. The UI, the touch points has to be soft so that we can collect more and more consent. So that's what we're doing on automation side, to be honest. All these legal, marketing, and then automating, making sure the number of touch points are reduced. This is the light version of it. Then we go to the DD discovery, where the DSR is automated. One of the customer came to us and see, I have one website which is login on which we offer the global solutions. So we cannot have 5 different URLs or consent forms per country. We need to have one form. I said, no problem. Based on the click, we know the country and we can populate the local form in the local language. So those are the automations which have to increase the touch points. With one click, which is Dubai or India or some country in Europe, it will open up the local form, local DSR form for that specific country. That's how we are basically targeting it.
I think whenever we talk about DPDPA, consent is inevitably the most important part of the conversation. But yeah, I think that's where the major uh, weight of DPDP lies, right? It's a consent heavy framework. So, if we move ahead, we have spoken a lot about what are the challenges, what does DPDP bring to the table, and Himanshu has also spoken a great deal about how these automations can help organization. But before we wrap up the conversation today, is there something on the operations level that you see, like that can be something that is not in the sight, that not so common, that people are visualizing in India, and that might come up soon for them as like a peekaboo or something like that.
I mean, honestly, like I feel like every client is a different experience. Every sector has its own challenges when it comes to DPDP
Right.
implementation. You literally get a
Right.
crash course on the industry when you dive deep. But one constant issue that comes up, at least from a legal perspective, when I look at it, and I know that the answer to this problem has to then be addressed by technology, which is that nobody wants to delete data. So the conversation around data
Okay.
retention schedules and how and what data needs to be retained for how long, first building that internal policy and then like translating that into technology and workflows, in my view, is something that, I mean, it takes a long time to get consensus. And which is what I mean when I say that, you may think it's a 2 months job, but when you have to take critical decisions on data deletion, it takes its own sweet time.
And Dhruv,
Yeah, I think
honestly speaking, there are many applications like SaaS applications, like one of them SAP. You cannot even delete the data. It's myth. So only few options left is, one of them is either you anonymize, pseudonymize, or you have to take some other measures. So we have to
right.
think
I think
the steps. Yeah. Back to you, Yogesh. Thank you.
thanks so much. So I think very true. Being talking to industries like e-commerce, manufacturing, like this is what I can really concur on. That this is a pain point. That deleting the data is a nightmare. The salesperson is the sales leads will going to come and bite my head off when I tell them to delete the data. So obviously, now I will just would like to close this conversation with a quick overview from Himanshu's side. Himanshu, so if you can give a quick gist that how in 90 days GoTrust can help an organization to start with the privacy journey, and what is the longer roadmap, if you can give a short and crisp view of that, because we only have a minute left in the conversation today,
Yeah,
so we can wrap up this webinar.
sure. So my 30 seconds on 90 days roadmap for DPDP compliance, my 30-second answer is, the most important part is, you start with the quick data map, and the data journey cannot start without doing the ROPA and DPI. That's the first step, which you have to collect. That's the first thing you have to do. And in parallel, if you are having a discovery, so start the discovery scan, because then your ROPA DPI will validate it automatically with your discovery scans, which you should finish within 90 days. So at the end of the 90 days, you will have a valid answer. Now, first month, if you're a small organization, you can finish this in 1 or 2 months. But if a bigger one, it might take to execute all the ROPA and DPIs across the organization. So first thing to start that, you have to have a board level meetings. You need to have a department level knowledge session. And the first thing which I learned from the market, very important, is that you need to have champions in every department, because department head cannot come to the meeting every time you want for. He's busy with all other things. So you have to get the champions across all other departments. With them, you can win the first 90 days in the best way. And after 90 days finishes, I think not after, even within, your DSR workflows, which are standard available with the tools, you can be created, set, and then after 90 days, you can modify them, or adopt those changes accordingly in the process. Because first 60 days, you will only be experiencing, okay, you will know more about your own company, because when you start the journey, data discovery journey, how the data is, or data lineage is across. That's what I will say.
Great, great. I think on this note, we can conclude today's conversation. For final comments, Dhruv, anything from your side before we
I
wrap
think
this
I
up?
think Himanshu has covered everything very, very appropriately, very practical insights. And I mean, obviously, all of that is coming from all the great work that you guys are doing with GoTrust. And I won't be surprised if in the coming months, when organizations are before the data protection board and they see that GoTrust was their compliance tool, then the presumption will be in favor of the organization that it is complying because it is using such a good tool. So good job to you guys for building something so fantastic, and thanks for having me here today.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Dhruv.
Dhruv. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Himanshu.
But Yogesh, it's a good idea. We can launch GoTrust guarantee. 90 days
New
guarantee
ideas
card.
emerging in this webinar.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the time.
Dhruv is
Nice
also
talking to you.
celebrated
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining in today for this insightful discussion. Thanks, Dhruv. Thank you.